Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to see examples of broken function level authorization exploitation in our application. We're going to focus on the authors and book APIs like put, delete. Now these should be accessible to admin level roles ideally in our application or any application, but we'll see how these endpoints are exploitable by attackers because of the lack of function level authorization checks. So let's go to our Visual Studio Code. Now, in our application, we have books route and authors route in books.js and authors.js files. Now let's focus on the books.js routes. Now we have get routes for normal users where they can fetch the books by ID or all the books. And also we have post, put and delete routes for books where we can add new books using post route, update books by ID, and then also delete books by ID. And similarly for authors, we have again two get routes to get all the authors and get authors by ID, but we also have post, put and delete routes to create new authors, update authors by ID, and then delete authors by ID. Now let's focus on the books route to update the books, right? Now let's go to our UI. Now in my user interface, I am logged in as user 1, right, which is a normal user, a non-admin user. Now if I go to my books, let's open our developer inspect tools and keep our network tab open here. Now if I click on the books tab here, I'm able to see all the books, but I'm able to see the title, author, category and publish date. I'm not able to see update or delete book options because I'm a normal user, right? But from this network call, I'm able to get the book's ID and author ID, author name, and other details like category, publish date, which is fine for a normal user. They should be able to see it. There is no sensitive information being displayed here. Now, if I log in as admin user, and again go here and click on our books page. Now because I am an admin, I am able to see update and delete options as well in my UI, which is fine because I am an admin, nothing wrong here. So this means our front end has implemented checks for admin and normal user roles properly and only displaying the admin features to admins and not to normal users, right? Let's log out and log in back as normal user. Now if you look at our code and focus on the books route for updating a book by ID, which is our put route here. Now here you can see that we are doing authentication check, right? By adding this auth middleware. If I go to this page, and so here in this file you can see that we are not doing any authorization check. We are just checking that whoever is accessing this endpoint has a valid XAuth token, and if yes, I'm letting the user proceed with the request, right? There is no authorization check for the role of user. Now let's go back to our books and see how we can exploit function level authorization vulnerability, right? Now imagine I'm an attacker and a normal user. I can always access this information. As a normal user, I have this information, right? Let's copy it to our notepad, and I can also copy the curl request for this one. Let's copy the curl request for this get API call, right? I can remove all these headers from here. We don't need these. Right, so we got our authentication token, which is for a normal user, and we have the get call for books endpoint. Now as an attacker, it's easy for me to guess that if I want to update this book, as a standard I need to make a put call, right? And as a standard I may need to pass the book's ID, right? This is very easy to guess for any attacker, right? This is very industry standard. And because this is a put request now, I also need to pass the JSON data, and let's say I just want to update the title of the book, right? So I'm going to add title here, and this time I'm just going to say hacked book 1, and some more details like XXX. Now let's see what happens if I try to run this curl command. Okay, this is post request, so I need to add one more header here which tells my application that this is a JSON coming in. Now let's copy this and try to run it in our terminal. So let's open our CLI, copy it and press enter. So you can see that I was able to successfully update my book 1 by ID as a normal user, right? So this was all successful. Now I can go back to my UI, and if I refresh my page here, so here you can see that my update was successful, right? Now same for authors. Let's go to authors, and I can copy. So this time let's try to delete an author, right? Let's copy it as curl request. Go back to my notepad. Let's remove this one. Let's remove all these headers, we don't need these. Now again, this is a normal user role token, and again we know that by standard it has to be a delete request, right? And I need to pass the ID of author, right? So let's pick, okay, so let's pick author 1 here and paste it here, right? Now again, this is very simple to guess, and try to run it, right? Let's clear it, run it, and I got a success message here. Let's try to find author 1 in our application. So if I refresh this page, my author 1 is gone, deleted, right? Now as a normal user, I should not be able to do that. So let's go to a code and see why it happened. So in our books route to post, put and delete our books, we see that we are doing an authentication check, but we are never doing authorization check to know that if the person who is accessing these APIs is an admin or a normal user. So we need to add another check here to check for authorization of the user to be able to use these endpoints. Now we already have a auth middleware here which checks for authentication by verifying the token, but we need something like another middleware which checks the role of the user. So in admin.js file we have another middleware which also checks that if the user's role is admin or not. If this is not admin, we just send back access forbidden message with a 403 status code back to user and not let the user to proceed with the request, right? Now, to fix this vulnerability, we can add this middleware just like auth and then use it in our routes wherever we want only admin access to the routes. So let's fix this one, the put. So I can, in Express, we can merge different middlewares into one, and let's check the author one as well here. Let's add the admin middleware. I have it with different name. Let's rename it to admin and add it. And I want to add this admin to delete route for author, right? Now these routes delete in author and the put route in books will also check for the admin role of the token, right? Now I've updated this. Now in authors, let's say you want to delete the author 2, right? So I'm going to copy the ID of author 2, go back to my terminal here, and this time I want to change the ID that I'm passing as path parameter to author 2's ID. If you try to run it once again, this time we got access forbidden. Let's try to run the book 1's put request once again. Let's try the body a little bit. Let's add some random text here and try again. See, this time we got access forbidden once again because my admin middleware here also checked that the user token we are using is an admin token or not by adding this extra middleware controller. So this was one of the example of broken function level authorization vulnerability, and we have successfully mitigated this vulnerability. So this was just one example. So in your project, you can mitigate this vulnerability by following some of the best practices like deny all policy or principle of least privilege implemented in your project. So with this principle, you always start with deny all policy or do not provide access to any role, and then start explicitly granting specific roles with access which they need to each function by adding more of these middlewares like the one we just created for admin. Now, other practices involve reviewing API endpoints for function level authorization flaws regularly and fix them if found. Ensure that administrative controllers inherit from administrative abstract controllers. So let's say if you have a hierarchical structure and you are abstracting a new controller from the parent controller, just make sure that hierarchy is valid and you're not providing invalid access through any of the abstracted controller by mistake. And also authorization checks for administrative functions with regular controllers. So make sure that all the functions that are to be accessed by administrators are properly checked for authorization. So that's all for this lecture, and I will see you in the next one with a new vulnerability.